September is here. Players are trickling in, so what can we expect in the final months of Calgary's offseason?
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you so much for joining me here today. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for hanging out as we crush these final weeks of the offseason. Before we dive into today's episode, make sure you are subscribed wherever you're getting your podcasts, and of course, for free on YouTube as well. Happy to have you wherever you prefer to listen. But today we are going to be talking about, we have survived, okay? 5.5 months thus far without Flames hockey. We made it to September, and this is the final stretch before we see if the off-season work, or lack thereof, has paid off. And what should we expect about the team that's going to be slated on the ice next month? But let's dive into that. Oh boy. Where is the front office at? Because I feel like we are at a very different spot than where we were in May, June even. I think that it feels very different. I think people's trust in the front office has kind of diminished. And, that's not great considering Craig Conroy hasn't even been the general manager for 6 months. Things don't look great there. So I think that the rose-colored glasses have began to come off. I think that maybe people, including myself, were too excited and believed that everything would be fixed. The 5 or 6 UFAs would have been out, extensions would have been done. They would have traded Vladar. Dustin Wolf would obviously become the backup. And it kind of just feels like a Brad Treliving era offseason. Minimal work, but no veterans that are over the age of 35 have been signed. So I feel like that's a plus. It's really, but what else was done besides the Toffoli trade and some depth signings for the Wranglers? Nothing. Tyler Toffoli was the top scorer, and he was traded for Igor Sharangovich. I don't think that those two are remotely this comparable players. Tyler Toffoli led your team in scoring. Igor had a down year. You were never going to fully replace Gaudreau and Tkachuk, which, that you're not replacing 2 elite players. Now you're making the deficit worse. They're just digging their hole further and further, and it's going to be harder to climb out of. And we are watching that. We are watching them try to scratch their way out, and while some people are still digging. But how can you confidently say that this is a playoff team when there really hasn't been any change? This team is a talented roster, do not get me wrong, but I don't think that the offense is going to be there unless Mark Savard can truly figure out a way to unlock the potential in all of these players the same way that we saw Daryl Sutter do, but then disastrously undo. We really you're not going to have another good season of Flames hockey, and I'm sorry, fans are not going to want to watch that. People have already said how disappointed they are in the front office, in the change in management, and why would they continue to watch and support a team that isn't good? It's different if you are actively committing to the rebuild versus trying to put Band-Aids and duct tape, Scotch tape over leaking holes in a boat. It doesn't work. It might work for a little bit, but then you're sinking fast. And to me, doesn't feel, maybe it's just because it's a 5.5 months without Flames hockey, but the lack of moves tells me two things. This is either going in one direction or the other. A, they're fairly confident in extensions in this roster in general. They know that Noah Hanifin wants out, but he's really the only one that's been honest with them about it, or upfront, I should say. And then, so they're committing to, okay, like this team has potential there, right? Or it's going, we're just going to have a repeat of last year because no one knows what they want to do with this team. And people they just aren't aggressive enough. And I get it. It's a business. You have to take care of your people. But at the same time, it's a business. You got to get the work done. And if you want to be a competitive hockey team, prove it. I'm not saying you have to go out there and sign a ridiculously expensive superstar that you can't afford, by the way. Make that trade. Is Noah Hanifin just going to wait until the trade deadline? Because he is not. I'm sorry. If this team is good at the deadline, he's not going to be traded. And that's already one player you're watching walk. The one that you really don't want to watch walk. And coming up next, we are going to talk about where things are at, because we are still playing the waiting game. And before we do that, I do want to take a quick break here to talk to you about AG1. The number one most important thing in your day is how you start your day. And I recommend Athletic Greens to anyone that just wants to add that extra boost to their day. You get all your vitamins and minerals. You get help with your immune system, good skin, it's just a bunch of positives. Who doesn't love that? And I gave AG1 a try because I have gut problems, especially in the morning, my poor stomach. And I did notice a difference. I feel better. I don't feel gross. And I just really like with AG1 how it's a glass of water. I don't need to take a fistful of probiotic, flaxseed oil, B12, like any of that. Like, it is quite literally just a scoop of powder in a glass of water, stirred, and you're drinking something that tastes like tropical, fruity goodness. And I think that it's great that athletes are drinking AG1, and, they're taking great care of their body as well. And that's why I'm a fan, because if these athletes are trusting AG1, then I'm going to trust them too. And especially because I've tried it myself. It tastes really good, and I've noticed a difference. It's a micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody take care of their health every day. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from a supplement routine, then AG1 is the thing for you. Then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That is drinkag1.com/NHL network. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. It is hard to believe that we are pushing through the final month of the offseason. I didn't know we were ever going to get here. It feels like that game against Arizona happened a lifetime ago, game 82. It's done. That's put behind us. We can move forward with our lives. And the book is closed on that chapter. They tried the Daryl Sutter thing again, somewhat successful. Will not be remembered for success, but rather the damage. So, time to start something new with Ryan Huska, Craig Conroy, Jerome McGinley, and hope and optimism. But today, On 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman talked about how the conversations between Calgary and Elias Lindholm's camp are expected to pick up when he gets back into town. Okay, that does not surprise me. That is typically what happens. It doesn't sound like Lindholm cares either way what happens. I feel like you should. He said that he's willing to stay in Calgary. And then I saw a very interesting tweet. It was like, willing to stay does not mean you want to stay. So, the wording there, it really is a key part, because I'm willing to go to work because I have bills to pay. I don't want to go to work. I want to stay home. But I think it is so interesting that the Flames are fine going into the season with 6 pending UFAs, including Noah Hanifin. It's nuts to me, because I thought that he would have been one of the first ones moved. I thought that he would have been gone before Toffoli. I kind of thought Toffoli might resign, but there was no reason for the Flames to give him 7 years. That's absolutely crazy. And I thought that he would have been moved ahead of the draft or during the draft. I thought him and Vladar would have been those guys. But I feel like it's going to be one of those situations where, we'll see where things shake out. So either you have a player walk, or you have a team come calling in the middle of the season because one of their defensemen got hurt. That's good. It's not good that a player got hurt, but at least someone is showing interest in one of your players, right? You hope that someone is going to inquire about some of these players, if not all of them. And I think that teams will be a little more likely to call for players, or the Flames will be more likely to call around the deadline. I think that it's just more realistic to expect that at this point, because it doesn't seem like they care or they mind going into the season the way that they're going. Their roster is assembled the way that it is, and they're just going to take a gamble. And I feel like that is very Calgary Flames of them. So we really aren't getting that different philosophy that kind of we're sold. But another thing here is, you stop listening to people on Twitter that have quite literally no sources. Noah Hanifin, I have seen like 2 accounts with sources say, Noah Hanifin's going to Buffalo, like he'll be on the move this week. And then I've seen, I've talked to Vladar myself, and, he really wants to stay. And sources are saying that the Lindholm contract is all but done. Stop listening to those people. Stop feeding them the attention they want, because it's just not worth your time. And they're always wrong. So just wait for a real credible source to tweet it. But anyways, I don't really like that they're going into the season like this. I think that it's unproductive. I think that it's almost setting yourself up for failure here. I don't know why they want to go into the season with 3 goaltenders. To me, that makes no sense. Dustin Wolf is ready for the NHL. Trade Daniel Vladar. He's been good. He's been good to Calgary. Send him off. It's time to pull the Band-Aid off. And I get it. Players are coming back to town, and, you're going to have to start moving things forward. But it's like Zoom didn't exist for all this time. Zoom, FaceTime, Skype, phone calls, emails, texts, nothing. It feels like nothing got done. And I understand that obviously we don't see everything, but there were no rumblings, true rumblings, or anything over the offseason. And that's not always a good thing, clearly. But playing the long game here feels like a recipe for disaster. What happens when most of these guys walk for nothing next July? What happens? Craig Conroy has already failed. If that happens, not this offseason. But it would look like a massive failure on his part because he said he wasn't going to let all those guys walk. The Backlund situation really isn't going to... I think that's going to be a nasty split at the end, to be honest. I think that he is taking his sweet time to try to get more money. And the front office is it's going to end up being like, no, thanks, but no thanks. And it's just going to end like that. It does sometimes, unfortunately. But there has to be a certain level of urgency, and there's nothing. There's just nothing. And I don't know what the Flames are supposed to do. Why should Flames fans feel confident about being a competitive team when you are icing pretty much the same roster that you did last year, except you're taking away their leading scorer? There's not much to invest in. I'm not going to put my time and money to go to Calgary to watch a game, even if I was local. I don't until I see something different. We aren't seeing change. We saw change, but off the ice, and we knew that that's where change needed to happen. But there also needed to be adjustments on the ice, and they didn't happen. Trading Tyler Toffoli does not fix anything, and kind of digs that hole I was talking about a little deeper. What are you gonna do? Guy put up 30-something goals last season. No one else on your team's doing that. Where's your offense going to come from? The sky? It's very frustrating, and you just kind of hope that Mangiapane, Dubé, Huberdeau, Lindholm, all the guys that you're paying to score, You need them to pop. You need them to do something. Matthew Coronado, Jacob Pelletier, the young guys really are going to have to make an impact on this roster. And it's not fair that it's falling on their shoulders. But alas, this is a Calgary Flames masterclass. So coming up next, we are going to talk about the final few weeks, days of the waiting game. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you're getting your podcasts. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at @JessBelmosto. We have seen it on social media. Players are beginning to trickle in. They are flying from Sweden to Calgary, from Czech to Calgary, Texas, Blake Coleman to Calgary. It's nice to see that the players are coming back. I don't think I've seen a time, at least in the time that I've been covering the team, where players are coming back this early. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. I think that they're excited to start something new and, hit the ground running, but they can only do so much too. I do like that it looked like the Colemans were kind of back and forth during the summer. I think that's neat, and they were enjoying the Calgarian summer with their daughters. Fortunately, there were the wildfires, and hope everyone's doing okay with those as well. But it's been months of this, waiting for the next shoe to drop or the first domino to fall. I guess the Tyler Toffoli one fell and they just didn't knock the next ones, but it's so frustrating because we have been just waiting. Almost 6 months of just waiting. It truly feels like we are nowhere closer than we were when the season ended. Personnel-wise, that's all sorted out. But what about the on-ice product? Are the Flames truly, or I guess the Flames coaching and personnel, are they that confident in this roster? They're a good team, and they've all been putting in the work over the summer. Going to be different styles of coaching that aren't what that was. So maybe I'm the one that's just not believing in this team. I need to see it. I need to see what the first 6 weeks of this season look like. Because if it's anything like last year, you guys, we are just going to have locked on venting sessions every night after the game. Because it was so frustrating covering that team because you knew that they could be better. So if they fall back to that this year, you're really going to look at management and say, what the heck did you do? You just took these guys' words that, you know, they were going to be better, and you built a team around that. And what are you doing? But I want to see progress in all aspects of this. I want to see a better team. I want to see extensions or trades. I want to see some sort of commitment, because they do have a talented roster. Do not get me wrong. But like, it all looks good on paper. It doesn't matter how it looks on paper. It's how it plays out on the ice. To have a talented roster, but the non-committal from these players, it just does not bode well for the Flames. There has to be some sort of, again, urgency. There's nothing. No urgency. Craig Conroy is just allowing them to drag their feet. Noah Hanifin, you are excused from any of this, because you cannot just call these teams yourself and say, trade me, or, you know, you can't trade for me. You can't. But Backlund, Lindholm, Chris Tanev is also kind of excused because he's probably towards the end of his career. Dan Vladar, we know he's gone. Forgetting some players, but regardless, I just think that Flames fans have to do themselves a favor and keep the expectations low so you don't get hurt. I said that a lot last season. Someone told me that when I was like 12, and it has stuck with me 15 years later. Keep the expectations low so you don't get hurt and you can't be disappointed. Flames go in and have an absolutely fantastic October and keep it up through American Thanksgiving, and they're looking pretty good. I would expect players to re-sign by then. I just think, again, they shouldn't be dragging their feet. It's either you want to stay or not, because it should not depend on this year's success. This is a long-term picture here. That is that. And I look forward to hearing what y'all have to say in the comments or in the reviews. I love when I get to hear from you on Twitter as well. So that'll do it for today's episode. Make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you are getting your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. Follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto, and of course over on the show's Twitter at LO_FlamesPod. Nick will be back on Wednesday, and I'm sure we're gonna do some sort of brain exercise again, because we have to shake off our own dust as content creators and podcasters. This is our preseason too. So until then, stay safe, stay hydrated, and be kind.